envelope in Kemi's hand didn't contain money. It contained proof. Names, dates, receipts, signatures, and one buried secret powerful men had hoped would never come to light. Rain poured down the narrow street in Mushin as Kemi stood frozen, the envelope trembling in her hand. Chairman Sogo was the first to speak. "What nonsense is this?" he snapped. "You think you can come into my area and turn people against me?" Before Adrian could answer, Florence Cole stepped forward, calm and unshaken. "No," she said. "We came because men like you have been feeding on fear for too long." The street went silent. Then 2 uniformed officers stepped out of the second vehicle. Whispers spread through the crowd. One officer approached Sogo. "Chairman Sogo, you need to come with us for questioning." "Questioning for what?" Sogo barked. "Illegal levies, intimidation, forced settlement arrangements, destruction of business property." For the first time, Sogo looked uncertain. He glanced at Kemi, not with anger, but with the look of a man realizing he was losing control. Adrian spoke quietly. "Not just her. There are others too." The officer placed a hand on Sogo's arm, and moments later, the drums had stopped, the crowd had parted, and Chairman Sogo was led away in the same rain that had almost witnessed Kemi's humiliation. Inside the house, Kemi finally opened the envelope. The first document was an old land allocation paper. Then came purchase receipts, a mechanic cooperative registration form, and finally, an old photograph of her father, Pa Afolayan, standing proudly beside a wooden shed. Mama Sade saw it and covered her mouth. "Oh God," she whispered. "That was the day he made the final payment." Kemi looked up. "Final payment for what?" Mama Sade's voice shook. "That workshop land. Your father wasn't renting it the way people believed. He was buying it little by little through the cooperative." Kemi stared at her in disbelief. Adrian stepped closer, his voice gentle. "My legal team checked the records. Your father's name appears in old land files tied to that workshop cluster. Some of those plots were due compensation. Others were due title confirmation." Kemi's lips parted. "If that's true, why did we lose everything?" Mama Sade answered with pain. "Because after your father died, the papers disappeared." The room went still. Adrian handed Kemi another document. One name had been circled. Sogo Adekunle. Kemi's hand tightened around the page. "It means," Adrian said, "your father's space was never supposed to be controlled by Sogo. The levies were illegal. Your family may have been denied ownership rights and money that should have come years ago." Kemi felt the weight of it all hit at once. All these years, she thought she had only been fighting poverty. Now she understood she had also been fighting theft. The kind hidden in paperwork, silence, and the deaths of honest men. The next morning, Adrian brought Kemi, Tayo, and Mama Sade to a small legal office. There, a retired cooperative treasurer named Mr. Sanusi confirmed everything. "I remember your father," he said. "Honest man, paid every installment himself." Then he lowered his eyes. After he died, the file should have gone to the family, but someone from the local office interfered. "Who?" Adrian's lawyer asked. Mr. Sanusi swallowed hard. "Sogo." That was when the full truth came out. Kemi's father had built something real. He had left something behind. It had simply been stolen before she was old enough to protect it. Florence gently placed a hand over Kemi's wrist. "Receiving what is rightfully yours," she said, "is not begging." That was when Kemi finally cried. Not loudly, just enough to release years of pressure she had carried alone. By that afternoon, a formal complaint had been filed. The Land Records Office was contacted. A stop order was placed on any transfer involving the workshop cluster. But powerful men rarely surrender quietly. The next evening, word came that Sogo had used his connections to secure temporary release while the investigation continued. Tayo was furious. "He'll come back," he said. "He'll try something." Kemi believed it too. So Adrian sent 2 discreet security men to watch the street from a distance. At first, Kemi hated the idea. "You can't surround my life with your people," she told him. Adrian nodded. "You're right, but I'm not apologizing for making sure no one drags you away in the dark." She wanted to argue. Instead, she fell silent, because part of her already knew his concern was real. Days passed, and slowly, life began to shift. Mama Shade was moved to a better clinic through a women's emergency support program Florence quietly arranged. Tayo's school fees were handled through a scholarship intervention. Bisi received books and supplies without being made to feel like charity. Everything was done with dignity, and that mattered to Kemi more than money. Then one afternoon, Adrian took her to the remains of her father's old workshop. The place was still damaged, broken timber, bent zinc, mud hardened under old oil stains. But Kemi no longer saw only ruin. She saw proof. She picked up a rusted spanner from the ground and brushed the dirt away. Then she said, "If I get this place back, I don't just want a shed." Adrian looked at her. "What do you want?" "A real workshop," she said. "A place where girls can learn this work, and nobody laughs before they see what they can do." Adrian smiled quietly. "That," he said, "is the first selfish thing I've heard you say." Kemi almost smiled. "It's not selfish." "No," Adrian said, "it isn't." A few days later, Florence introduced Kemi to Dara, a director of a technical support initiative for women in skilled trades. Dara spoke to Kemi like a professional, not a charity case. "This isn't a handout," Dara said. "It's an investment in skill." Kemi looked at Adrian. He said nothing. Dara continued, "If you accept, do it because you intend to become too good to be ignored." Kemi accepted. After that, everything moved quickly. Surveyors visited the workshop cluster. Old discrepancies were confirmed. More mechanics came forward with stories of illegal payments. And on a hot Thursday morning, an interim order restored possession of Pa Afalayon's original space pending full legal review. When Kemi heard the news, she didn't scream. She just sat down. Some victories arrive so heavy that the body doesn't know what else to do. Soon, the rebuilding began. New roofing sheets, a stronger workbench, tool storage, better lighting, protective gear, and finally, a new signboard. Afolayan Auto Works, repairs, diagnostics, training for women in technical trades. Kemi stood across the road and stared at it. For the first time since her father died, she felt something bigger than survival. She felt direction. That evening, Adrian came by after the workers had left. No suit jacket, no assistant, no performance, just him. Kemi was under a customer's car tightening a bolt when he arrived. When she rolled out, grease marked one cheek. He noticed. She noticed him noticing, and for the first time, she gave him a full smile. A real one. The kind that makes a man forget what he planned to say. "You came," she said. "You sound surprised." "I'm learning not to be." He looked around the workshop. "You did this well." Kemi wiped her hands. We did. The words stayed between them. We. Soft, dangerous, hopeful. Later that night, they sat outside on low stools while a nearby vendor roasted corn. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Adrian asked, "Did you always know you were this strong?" Kemi let out a quiet laugh. "No, I just never had the luxury of falling apart." He looked at her differently after that. Not as a billionaire looking at a struggling mechanic, but as a man finally seeing someone who understood survival. When he stood to leave, he hesitated. "Kemi, if I hadn't broken down in the rain that night..." He stopped, because some feelings arrive before courage does. But before he could finish, a luxury car pulled up outside the workshop. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door. Then a woman emerged. Tall, elegant, expensive. She walked straight toward Adrian and kissed him lightly on the cheek. Not warmly, possessively. Kemi's expression changed at once. Adrian's face hardened. "What are you doing here, Vanessa?" Vanessa barely looked at Kemi before speaking. "Your board meeting was moved. My father is furious. The investors are arriving next week, and everyone expects you to stop disappearing into surprises." Then her eyes rested on Kemi again. Cold, deliberate. "And if this little mechanic situation becomes one more scandal before the engagement dinner..." "Enough," Adrian said sharply. Vanessa blinked. "There is no engagement," Adrian said. "There never was." But the damage had already been done. Kemi looked from Vanessa to Adrian, and something painful shifted inside her chest. Not because she had any claim over him, but because hope had arrived before safety did. Adrian turned toward her. "Kemi." But she stepped back. Only one step. Still, it felt much farther. Then she lifted her chin and said quietly, "I think you should go settle what belongs to your world." "That's not what this is," Adrian said. Kemi gave him a faint, sad smile. "Maybe, but it is what it looks like." And sometimes what hurts first is not betrayal. It's confusion. The kind that makes you wonder whether the miracle you touched was ever really yours to trust. Kemi turned and walked back into the workshop. Adrian stood there in silence. And for the first time that night, even Vanessa looked uncertain. Because whatever she thought she had interrupted had clearly become far more real than she expected. Who was Vanessa really? Why did she speak as if Adrian's future had already been decided? And now that Kemi had finally started rebuilding her life, was her heart about to lead her into the very kind of pain she had spent years surviving? Because what happens next won't just test Kemi's heart. It will force Adrian to choose between power and love. If you want part 3, comment, "Continue the story."